Before we get into the episode, we would like to issue a content warning.
Due to the nature of this show, we will be discussing sensitive topics, which could include murder, violence, sexual assault, domestic abuse, animal abuse, elder abuse, alcohol, drugs, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, and more. Please take this into account when deciding when, where, and if to listen. Hello, and welcome to Looking for a Man in His 30s, a Criminal Minds podcast. I'm Emma.
And I'm Sara, and today we'll be discussing Season 1, Episode 8, Natural Born Killer, which first aired on November the 16th, 2005. But first, it's time for a little chat.
Yeah, so, Sarah, we could talk about how we're recording on Earth Day and how important that is. Don't worry, I do shoehorn it in later. We could talk about how Every have stolen one of my parcels.
What?
I can't even tell you about the bank holiday weekend.
Oh.
Or the new Final Destination movie trailer. That looked really good, Final Destination Bloodlines. Instead of doing any of that, filling you in on anything interesting that happened in my life, instead I'd like to take the chance to alienate a group before we even start the episode recap. This may be the earliest in any episode that I have alienated a group, and possibly the first time that I've done it on purpose without it just slipping in as my natural bias. So anyway, transphobia tweet that I wouldn't even know about if I wasn't friends with a superfan. Is your back not aching from punching so fucking low? So in case there was any confusion, let me and Sarah make this crystal damn clear.
Mm-hmm.
Trans women are women. Trans men are men. Non-binary people are valid.
Yeah.
This is a safe space for the queer community, and UK transphobes can take comfort in knowing that at least they'll escape the British winter when they're burning in hell. Anyway, how was your weekend, Sarah? You want to talk?
So Easter Sunday was a few days ago. I know this is probably showing later in the year. So I spent Easter Sunday with the family. Nephews enjoyed their Easter eggs very much, as did I. As you do, because no one's too old for an Easter egg at the end.
I had a Ferrero Rocher one.
Ooh. Well, originally I bought a Bounty one, but then my brother-in-law decided he wanted that one, so I had to have Whisper instead. But I like both chocolates equally. So. Another event from this weekend, not that I'm Catholic or my family is, no. But my dad seemed very shocked that the Pope died the other day.
Weird, because didn't he know the Pope had been quite sick for a while?
Well, he knew that, but on Easter Sunday, he'd been shown, I think it was on the news, he'd been seen, like, speaking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I saw him at the, he was speaking at the Vatican.
Apparently he only said, like, a few words or something. But then anyway, so he died the next morning, and my dad was very shocked about this. I don't know why. I kind of expected it, but, you know. But then yesterday, which was Easter Monday, the weather was atrocious. It rained all day. And then my dad, in his infinite wisdom, decided that the rain was God's tears because Pope Francis had died. Strange dream. I don't know how his brain works, but...
In my imagination, your dad just came into the room and went, "Oh, it's raining, that must be God's tears," and then left while you were still sitting there like, what?
Well, weirdly enough, at this point, we were driving...
Is that basically how it went?
No, we were driving to Specsavers for his appointment. And obviously the rain's coming down, I've got my windscreen wipers on. And then he just comes out with this statement, and I'm like, what? I was like, Dad, just shut up when you get there. Also, speaking of Specsavers, shout out to Specsavers. They adjusted my glasses free of charge. But kind of budgeted on my dad's appointment. But they were sliding down my nose, so I had to do something about it. So they fixed the arms, and it's all good now.
That's very nice. And just to prove that we're not sponsored by Specsavers, last October I went to Specsavers saying, hey, there's a lot of pressure above and below my eye, and I now can't see out of my right eye. And they were like, okay, cool. And they looked at my eyes and they were like, oh yeah, you need new glasses. And I was like, I can't stand looking at the light. Anyway, turns out, I think I brought this up, my migraine issue, before. Anyway, and they charged me 150 quid for new glasses that I didn't need, and then took their time about giving me a refund.
Oh.
I had to wait in the store for 2 hours for the manager to see me.
And then the rest of this week, we're gearing up for my youngest nephew's first birthday, which is next week. So, Costco trip on Thursday. Woo! Woo! Mm-hmm. The party supplies, obviously, because we need snacks. And then on Sunday, we're going to the bowling arcade. Maybe that's more for my other nephews, but, you know, the baby will.
Yeah, I didn't really see a 1-year-old being able to roll a bowling ball, but at least the others can have fun.
Yeah.
Hi! If you're watching the video podcast, you can probably tell that something is different about us.
Yeah.
My arm is in a sling, that's why. And unfortunately, part of the video, or actually part of every clip for this episode, glitched when Sarah went to edit it. Yeah. So I have to restart from the intro and do the first half of the episode recap.
Yeah. So if you notice us wearing different clothes, that is why, because this is recorded on a different day.
Yes. And also my arm is in a sling, which I feel is the most different part of the
Yes.
It's not that you're wearing a slightly different blue floral dress, it's my arm.
Yeah.
So it's actually a funny story.
Yeah.
I tried to take my cat to the vet for his annual injections, and he was not happy about that. Obviously, it's my fault because I did make him go to the vet, but he bit me really, really hard. And at first, I was just like, oh my God, that really, really hurts. And the vet was like, you need to go to urgent care. And I was like, ridiculous, man. I don't need to go to urgent care just so my cat bit me. Like, I've been scratched and bitten by a lot of cats throughout my life. You know, whenever you're trying to get them to take a flea tablet, for instance.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, don't be silly. That's ridiculous. And then I was still in quite a lot of pain after the vet had seen both my cats. And I was like, because he really stressed, you need to go to urgent care. And I was like, okay, fine, then I will. Because I was a bit worried, like, oh no, what if he's like snagged a tendon or something? So I go to urgent care, and it's about 2 hours that I'm waiting there in total. I go through triage where they take off the plaster the vet put on, clean it, put on another plaster, and then send me out to the waiting room again. Yeah. And then I go back out to see the next doctor, and she's like, okay, so I will clean it, I will put iodine on it, and I will then cover your entire hand in a giant plaster. And she says, right, you're going to take antibiotics for 7 days and come back to us if it gets any worse, but this is just a precaution. Yeah. Anyway, at that point, I go through Friday, I take off the dressing, she says take it off after a day, and my hand has ballooned up. You know, like when you see like those blue plastic gloves and someone's put like water in them?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. That's what my hand looked like. Like there was swelling all across my hand. It was going up over the knuckles and nearly to like the second knuckle on my hand.
And it's as bad as it sounds, because I saw a photo and it looked horrendous.
Yes, we can put the horrible, gross photos on our Instagram.
Yeah.
So on Friday, I'm just like going back to urgent care, and I think what they're going to do is they're going to be like, okay, so I don't even know. I thought they might be like, this is to be expected. Go home. And I get seen by a doctor who's like, when you come out, go sit in this area. And normally they send you back out to like the main waiting area. And I was like, oh, that's probably not good. And then he's like, I'm going to ring plastics at your local hospital. And I was like, okay. And I was like, plastics? What the hell? But I didn't ask that because I was a bit like, you do what you need to. I'll just sit here quietly.
Yeah.
And then he says, if plastics is closed, because they might have gone home for the day because it's like 5, you might have to go to Salisbury. And I was like, sorry, what? Like, that's an hour and a half drive that he wants me to make on a Friday evening. And I was like, that sounds pretty serious. Like, make an hour and a half drive to a different hospital that is not in your city. He says, okay, plastics has gone home, but ortho will see you, like orthopedics. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, still worried. Like, I'm just like, and he was like, they might need to do a small operation, which is like cleaning the tendon sheath. And I was like, sorry, what? So went to my local hospital, and they said, okay, what we'll do is we'll take a blood test to make sure you don't have like sepsis. Good thing, didn't have sepsis. Wonderful. And they were like, oh, maybe you should just try and keep it elevated. So they gave me a temporary sling. And that was awful. It was very bulky. So yeah, they gave me IV antibiotics, and they said, got an appointment to see plastics at 8:30 on Monday. I'm like, what? What do you mean? This is fucking terrifying. They say, come back if anything changes. And then Saturday night, I'm like, literally, my hand feels like it's on fire. I've continued taking the oral antibiotics.
Yeah.
I've kept my arm elevated in the temporary sling. And I was like, my hand feels like it's on fire. Swelling has gone above the second knuckle now. Like, look at my second knuckles. They look like as if there's just like a little bubble of water underneath the skin. Yeah. At this point, I'm thinking, they're going to have to operate tonight, or I'm going to like lose the ability to move my fingers, because I can't. The problem is that I can't make that hand into a fist. Yeah. I can barely bend these 2 fingers. Yeah. That was Saturday night. I went back. They took blood pressure and temperature and whatever. My resting heart rate was 105, and my blood pressure was 147 over something, I don't know. My baseline seems to be at 130, and to be honest, the pharmacist looked at me funny when I had that. He was like, it should be 120. Come back next week. But that was a year ago. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I was like, 147. That's not good. But I think that when you have an infection, your blood pressure and your heart rate must raise anyway. So I was like, they're sending me home. Like, they sent me home with a new sling. Yeah. So anyway, on Monday morning, 8:30 a.m., I go to plastics. They see me at about 10 o'clock because it's just, this is an emergency referral over the weekend. So they see you whenever they have time on Monday. You know, is someone not coming to their scheduled appointment? Great. So the doctor looks at my hand. She presses down on it, and she's like, okay, so the swelling has gone down, which is really good. Did anyone take an x-ray? Because I'm not seeing that in the notes. And I was like, no. And she was like, you've come to the hospital 3 times about this injury, and no one, like 3 times over the course of 4 days, and no one has done like an x-ray, like to make sure that 1, a bit of bone didn't get chipped, and 2, to make sure a bit of the cat's teeth is not still in your hand. And I was like, and then she was like, are you up to date on your tetanus? And I said no, and I told them that Thursday. I said the last tetanus jab I'd had was in 2011, which Sara remembers because Sara was with me.
Oh yeah, that was I remember that time.
Yeah, that was when I spiked my foot.
What 3 words? Leave Arch file. That's all we're saying.
It's an interesting story, but we will save it for another time.
We will.
So anyway, yeah, that is what's happened to me. And she gave me a tetanus shot. She ordered an X-ray, and she said, "You can come back on Thursday, and I will see you then to see if we need to do surgery." But so far, I've avoided it, which is good, because ideally, I do not want to have surgery. Like, I will if it's the, option, but I'm not like, oh, I hope I get to have surgery. So anyway, that is what's happened to me, and why in this part of the episode at least I'm going to be wearing a sling.
Yeah.
If you are only listening to the audio version of this podcast, there was no point in listening to any of that. Nothing's different.
No, you can't see us.
Yeah. But you will get to see on the Instagram or on the YouTube the pictures of my really gross hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that out of the way, we'll be back with the episode recap after this short break.
Welcome back, and now we're on to Emma with the episode recap. So Emma, wheels up.
Wheels up. We start off in Baltimore, Maryland. It's in a pool hall, so it's very dimly lit. And it appears that a couple of the regulars are just kind of teasing the bartender. They're having fun. There's a slow country song on in the background. And there is a guy here who looks like he would be Kenickie from Grease if Grease was set in 2005. He has slick back blonde hair, a leather jacket, and a bad attitude. Seriously, if you went to see Grease on, like, the West End in 2005, this is what Kenickie would look like. So there's also a guy in a suit and another guy in a trench coat who have come up to Kenickie and to Kenickie's friends. Kenickie's friends are like, "Hey, this guy looks like a square." And it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, he does look like an accountant. I will give them that. And I'm not entirely sure what he's doing in this bar, but Kenickie just says, "Yeah, this guy arrested me a few years ago." And the guy's like, "Yeah, just want to check you're keeping clean, Kenickie." He doesn't say Kenickie. The guy's name is actually Jimmy. I'm sorry. Just wants to check that Jimmy is keeping clean, and Jimmy blows him off. Jimmy does this really funny thing where he's like, "Rehabilitated." And the cop is like, "Yeah, so step out of line sooner or later." And then Jimmy assures the people that he's with that he's not involved with cops whatsoever. This was just some guy who busted him, giving him a hard time. Which is a bit weird, because they didn't actually seem like they were friends. So I'm not sure why Jimmy feels the need to reassure Freddie that he, has nothing to do with the cops. The cop's like, "Hey, I'm watching you." And Freddie's like, "Is that your friend?" No, what friend would say that?
Yeah.
I just don't get it. If we were together in a bar and someone came up to me and went, "I'm watching you, Murphy," would you be like, "Oh, is that your friend?"
No.
So Jimmy drives Freddie home, and it's a really ugly car, by the way. Even Freddie says this car's a piece of shit. And then Freddie says, "Hey, do you want to have dinner with me, my aunt and uncle?" But Jimmy's like, "Nah, I've got stuff to do." He waits until Freddie gets inside before he drives off, just like when people are dropping me at my house. So that's nice. Even people in organized crime are like, "Hey, let's just make sure everyone gets home okay. Text me when you get home. Text me when you're on the bus. Take a picture of the license plate of the taxi. Share your ride info with me." I'm just saying, we should all be more like organized criminals. Yeah. But perhaps only when it comes to making sure people get home okay.
Yeah, not the other stuff.
Up to the next scene, there's a woman who is, she's walking towards the house, and she's in a dressing gown with rollers in her hair, And there's like big band music going off in the background. Let's Do It, Let's Fall in Love by James Darren. So anyway, this music is playing at what seems to be the loudest volume ever. Like, the house is almost shaking. And this woman is like, I need to go and tell the neighbours to turn down Let's Do It, Let's Fall in Love by James Darren. And you're thinking, who would blast this music? Like, it's not exactly music that you blast out of the stereo to, like, wake up the entire street. Anyway, the woman in the dressing gown is, like, knocking on the door going, Helen, do you know what time it is? Helen! And I'm afraid that Helen does not know what time it is because, spoiler alert, Helen is dead. So suddenly the door opens and Jimmy, covered in blood, runs out of the house, knocks this woman full on down onto the grass. Like, she has climbed up some stairs onto the porch and he just, like, knocks her straight back onto the grass. And she's just, like, holding a blood-covered hand up as he runs off into the night. And she's just like, somebody help! Somebody help! No one can hear you over the music. I don't know why more people haven't come to complain about the music, but you're going to have to get up, go back to your house and ring 911. So next morning, there are about 30 cop cars outside. We cut inside to see Morgan leading the team around the crime scene, saying, this is worse than anything the Baltimore cops have seen before, which seems unlikely, but okay. Like, do we think that this murder is particularly bad? Like, compared to all of the other murders in Baltimore? The woman, the neighbor, described Jimmy as 20 to 40 years old and hopped up on those damn drugs.
Oh, damn.
And as someone who can literally never guess someone's age right, yeah, he looks 20 to 40 to me. That would be what I would be like. Yeah, well, he didn't look like a teenager, and he didn't look like he would be, a few years off pension age. So Gideon is like, well, eyewitness reports are notoriously unreliable. And it's like, okay, but they did come face to face when he literally shoved her downstairs onto the grass. So I don't know that that's particularly unreliable, Gideon. Morgan leads the team into the bathroom where it looks like a lot of the murder took place. There's blood everywhere. On the vanity, in the shower, there's even a pink rim around the bath, which for the purposes of this episode, indicates that someone bled out there and not that they used a bath bomb from Lush. Or at least that's what I think. It does take the team a little while to figure that out themselves.
Yeah.
So Helen's throat was slit when she was sitting at the vanity, which is a gruesome scene to imagine because she's literally looking at herself in the mirror as he puts the knife up to her throat. Being made to watch your own death terrifies me.
Yeah.
They say that her death was quick, which is not something that we said for her husband, who appears to have been absolutely eviscerated in the shower. Like, there is blood everywhere in this shower. It looks like a Jackson Pollock painting if Jackson Pollock only used blood as his medium. Somehow, none of it got on the shower gel, the bottle of which was completely clean. Anyway, he was killed quite brutally. So they're saying it's like he was eviscerated and the knife literally cut through the layers of muscles in the abdomen. And I was like, what? At this point. The problem is that on one hand, it looks like a disorganized killer with the evisceration, but the crime scene seems quite methodical and organized. The husband was tortured. He had burns, lacerations, and Reed says this is odd because people don't typically alternate between two types of torture as their method, especially if it's a signature for a killer. So they float the idea that it's either a team, one disorganized and one organized, or someone with split personality disorder, which I think is now called dissociative identity disorder. Just to further break the record that I enjoy doing, people with mental health disorders are much more likely to be the victims of violence than the perpetrators. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So Gideon points out that there are actually 3 murders, one in the shower, one at the vanity, and one in the bath. But there were only 2 bodies found, so what happened to the person in the bath? Actually, as it turns out, it gets worse. The level of the rim, of the blood rim in the bath, indicates to Gideon that the person would have lost all of the blood in their body, which he helpfully points out is 10.2 litres. Thanks. And that would mean he was dismembered in the bathtub. Absolutely awful. Thank you. I didn't want to know. Then we cut to a press conference where JJ is reading a prepared statement saying that all they know is that the suspect is a 24-year-old man who they believe is armed and dangerous. In the living room, Hotch is asking Reed and Elle what they know about the unsub from the 2 victims so far. By the way, it's not relevant to the show, but there is plastic on the couch and chairs, and oh my goodness, this has shot me all the way back to 1995 and my grandmother's living room. Like, they were sticky, they were painful. I cannot believe that we were just like, you know what would be really cool? A wipe clean couch. We'll just pattern it and then basically laminate it. So Reed says there are 2 types of torture, methodical and sadistic. Methodical would be the one where you're just trying to extract information from someone and it's used as a military tactic. Whereas the sadistic one, that would be the kind you're experiencing sort of gratification from. The torture is the point. So I will just put it out there that I think the Venn diagram of torturers who are doing it to get information or punish someone and torturers who are doing it to gratify themselves is a fucking circle. In fact, torture, as Gideon will say later in this season, is an ineffective method of interrogation because someone will just say whatever they want to get whatever you want to get you to stop.
Yeah.
Okay, so Elle says there's no evidence of sexual torture, so maybe this isn't a sadistic murder. And I'm like, people get their rocks off to all sorts of things. I don't know where you're like, this is no evidence of sexual torture. Like, he's getting off on this somehow.
Oh, yeah.
And Hotch says, oh, we don't actually have the 3rd body yet, so how could we tell? Well, that's not comforting, is it?
Yeah.
Upstairs, Morgan and Gideon are going over the crime. Morgan says the unsub probably killed Helen first, and there's a lovely transition shot where he turns to look at the vanity covered in blood, and then you see his imagination of what the murder looked like. I regret ever saying I like these transition shots. So this is psychological torture before physical pain for the other 2 people murdered. And Morgan says that the murder of Helen was too brief for the unsub to extract any sort of gratification from. But with the husband, he took his time, burning him, cutting him. And then we see an image of what we presume to be the unsub lighting his cigarette, which with what looks like a freaking welding torch. And I'm not a smoker, Sarah, but in the event that you didn't have a Bic lighter on you, would you use a welding torch to light your cigarettes?
To be fair, I've used the hob of an oven once, so...
Yes, a much more normal thing because the flames on that are a little easier to control.
Yeah, other than that... Bunsen, but no.
Gideon and Morgan are... They decide that they're dealing with a professional. So cut back to Jimmy, who's, let's face it, in a typical guy's apartment. It's got no personality at all to it. It really screams, my landlord picked the colour scheme. and the color scheme was good enough.
Why is it always magnolia?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because it's a blank slate, so you can imagine yourself. Because they do that when they're selling houses as well. It's like, you know, this has no personality to it because you are supposed to walk in and imagine your personality around it. Whereas when I was looking at flats to buy, there was one where they clearly had been like, we're not redoing it. And like there was bright colors everywhere, and I was like, this is amazing. And my dad was like, what are you talking about? Like, this had like primary colors as just the entire room.
Beautiful.
The bathroom is red, the kitchen is yellow. Like just bright yellow, and then loads of yellow accents, like yellow cupboards. But anyway, so yeah, it really screams. My landlord picked the color scheme, and the color scheme covers up the blood from the last guy. I don't know. It looked grim and it looked disgusting. But I do think that the landlord could at least have made it look nicer. Like Magnolia would have looked nicer than just kind of the dingy brown that was. So Jimmy is on the phone to someone while watching news coverage of the crime scene, and he's really agitated. Cut to Gideon and Morgan. They speculate that the third victim will show something about the killer, like perhaps it's someone he knows can be traced back to him, and that's why he was dismembered. But now I'm thinking back to the start. Jimmy wasn't carrying he wasn't carrying anything that could disguise body pieces out of the house as he knocked that woman over. Like, you would see if he was carrying a bag and it had an arm sticking out of it. Yeah. Or, you know, he would have dropped something. But, so I'm like, maybe he didn't kill them. Gideon gets Garcia to look up similar crimes in the last 10 years in this state and surrounding them. And then we get the horrible part where there's this man who's in an alley. He's probably homeless and looking for a dumpster to find something to eat. And then he finds the dismembered pieces of Freddy. Yeah, disgusting. As it turns out, we learned with the team back in Quantico that the police have found all of Freddy's body parts in dumpsters within 2 blocks of the crime scene. The killer did not keep any trophies. And Reed reports that Garcia has found a number of open murder cases all across the surrounding states, Virginia, Maryland, DC. And the link between all of these appears to be torture prior to death, the marks on the bones, and ties to organized crime. Okay, we'll be back with the rest of the episode recap after this short break.
And welcome back to Looking for a Man in His 30s. And Emma, would you like to continue with the episode recap?
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So JJ comes in with a sketch of Jimmy and tells Gideon that there are some agents out there who are not happy. Indeed, Josh Kramer, who is in charge of organized crime for Baltimore, introduces himself to Hotch and Gideon and says, "Hey guys, I'll take the case, don't worry." And I will be so honest, I do not understand all of this dick waving between different branches of law enforcement. Like, I'm sorry, I think there's enough crimes that you guys don't have to fight over which ones you can investigate. Is this why some crimes are going cold? Because you're like, oh, let me get this one. And then someone's like, no. And it's like a tug of war. Meanwhile, someone's murder goes uninvestigated in the background.
Solve the crimes. And get back to what you do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm sorry, is this why there are so many murders that go unsolved? Because you're like, well, this happened to a white person, so we're going to investigate it. And we're going to fight over 3 different branches of the law enforcement looking into it. So Hotch is like, well, actually, the person who killed the DeMarcos is definitely a psycho, so that does fall under, you know, the BAU. But Gideon appears to take it on the chin and says, "Thanks, Kramer, have a great day. I've got a book that I can get back to reading." Thanks for taking this. And he goes right into the briefing room and proceeds to give a basic profile and then assign Morgan, Elle, and Reed to investigate different parts of the case because he's not dropping it at all. He doesn't have a book to read or any other crime to solve. Morgan and Hotch are down at what looks like a scrap metal yard to interview Freddie's employer. And oh, look, it's the infamous cover, "We Work in Waste Management."
Oh, okay.
Michael Russo says he doesn't know anything and tells the agents that he doesn't know what they're talking about. He just runs a scrap metal yard because that's where the money is. Recycling, saving the earth. This man is a real hero who we should celebrate on Earth Day, Sarah, which is originally when we recorded this. And this is how I shoehorned it into the episode.
Yeah.
So Morgan and Hotch aren't really buying this. They're like, no, it's 2005. Gore lost the election. No one cares about recycling or saving the planet. So they try and goad him into saying something, but he knows what his rights are. He says, come back with paperwork and arrest me if you've got anything on me. If not, go away and I will attempt to recycle this scrap metal. Cut to Garcia's office. She and Reed are digging into the background of Freddie. He likes seafood, light beer, and spent his Thursday night with a lady, an expensive lady. And I get the impression that this isn't just someone with expensive tastes. This may be a sex worker.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Elle puts a coffee cup on the desk and Garcia grabs it and moves it away because there is expensive equipment, but it's incredibly passive aggressive. Like, Garcia, just say, hey, can you not put your cup there? I don't want it to get knocked over onto the computers. Otherwise, the computers go down and then I cannot do my job trying to catch these killers. She doesn't say anything like that. Just when asked about the associates, Reed says, well, they've all got criminal records, but one really interesting one is James Barker. He was put in juvie for attempted murder and released at 21 and then proceeded to get into trouble for other crimes. Armed robbery, petty theft, burglary, drugs, rape. But the weird thing, he says, is that criminals don't often start with attempted murder and then go on to lower level things like selling drugs and petty theft. So it means that someone was faking a criminal record. You know, like an undercover cop would do. But I have questions about this. Did the team in charge of faking criminal records for undercover agents, do they not have, like, this knowledge? Do they not think, hey, it would be better to put petty theft and selling drugs and burglary and rape, and then he was put in juvie for attempted murder? Why are they not doing this? Literally, I would be able to forge a better criminal rap sheet. So they pull up James Baker's mugshot, and lo and behold, it's Jimmy. They hold up the sketch from the eyewitness, but I'll be honest, I don't know if I see the similarities. It just looks like a kind of generic white guy. In fact, in the sketch, he's got like a strong jawline, kind of muscular-like, as if he was a running back, as opposed to just kind of like tall and skinny.
Yeah.
Anyway, Elle has an address for them to hit, and soon enough, Hotch and Morgan are bursting through the door. Hotch says he finds the apartment weird because there's nothing here, you know, it's just food in the cupboard, one change of outfit, which makes me think that Hotch has never gone on a terrible date with a guy off of Tinder. Because I'll admit I've never used Tinder, but this is exactly what the apartments or the flats look like when it's just a straight guy living on his own. There's like one football poster on the wall, and apart from that, nothing. Right, so this didn't happen to me, it happened to a friend, but she once walked into a guy's house, like flat, and he did not have a couch, right? He had one chair, And like he had one chair that faced the TV, and she was like, "Oh, are you redecorating or something? Are you getting a new furniture and it's just not arrived yet?" And he was like, "No." And then there was no further explanation.
Nice.
She was just like, "All right, so do I just sit on the floor? What is this?" So Hotch and Morgan are like, "This is an undercover cop." Whereas I would be like, "This is the guy that my friend went on 2 dates with and then was like, actually, no, it's not going anywhere." So we cut to Jimmy. He's waiting on a corner for Josh, who is Kramer, to pick him up, but Josh is late. Meanwhile, Morgan puts his fist through drywall and finds a gun that is standard law enforcement. And it's just really funny seeing him like tap the wall and then be like right above the cooker as well. I know that he tapped it to see where it was a fake, where it was like a cavity. But I just think that still punching right above a cooker is perhaps not a great idea. Not the best idea to hide something just behind the cooker either. Like, there's got to be pipes in there, right? Like gas pipes. So Morgan says, "Hey, I spent 18 months undercover. This is a crash pad." And then Josh arrives at the corner and he's jumped out of the car. He's saying, Jimmy, where are you?" And then he rings someone to say, Jimmy is missing. Josh then barges into Hotch's office and says, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you, dude? You're the one that was late to pick up an undercover agent. You know everything else that has gone down recently. Why were you like, "No, I won't pick him up just yet. He's fine." Like he's a kid at a sleepover and not an undercover agent in league with the mob. "Hey, Josh, I think we're just yelling at people to cover up our own shortcomings." I'm going to be patronizing to Josh this entire episode. He does look upset, but I am going to be like, this is mostly your fault. So anyway, the big reveal comes that Hotch doesn't know where Josh is, and he thought that Josh knew. And Josh is like, "No, I thought you knew." And Jimmy has been missing for at least the last 12 hours. So, this is the last you will see of the sling, hopefully, because by next week, when I record again, I should be sling free. So we'll be right back with the episode recap after this short break, and I will be slingless and in the original clothing. Okay, welcome back, guys. I am going to just reveal that I'm just going to go over the last big reveal. Hotch doesn't know where Jimmy is, neither does Josh, and the "fuck, this is messed up" scale has now gone from a 10 to a 1500. Jimmy's been missing for at least the last 12 hours. Gideon says that Jimmy's a suspect in the murder of the DeMarcos, but Josh says no, he just went there to talk to Freddie, and then he found the DeMarcos' bodies, so he called Josh immediately asking for a pickup. And Josh says that the target of their undercover investigation is Michael Russo. And Hotch says, "No, we saw him yesterday. He seemed surprised about the murders." And Josh points out something which I thought was very obvious. Yeah, people who run mob organizations are quite good liars. You don't get to be like the head of an organized crime syndicate and you just kind of like, you've always got to tell. Your nostrils always flare when you lie. So Josh tries to storm out, but Gideon says, "Hey, sit down. Let's talk about it." And it's like, sorry, what do you want to talk about? Josh is like, okay, so did the man who murdered the Marcos, does he have Jimmy now? Has he already killed him? Jimmy's got 2 young kids he needs to get back to. And Hotch and Gideon don't actually have an answer for that, so I don't know why they asked him to sit down and talk to him. Cut to a fucking terrifying scene of Jimmy. He is tied to a chair in a completely dark room, which is only lit by like an IKEA standing lamp. And Jimmy has sustained a huge beating. His lip is bloody, his eye is swollen. I feel ill just looking at it.
Yeah, it looked horrible.
The unsub, yeah, it was absolutely gross. That swelling on his eye. I was like, oh my god, like I think he's gonna die. The unsub is asking who knows about him, and Jimmy's promising that he hasn't told anyone, but the unsub doesn't believe him. And to be honest, I don't know that I would either. Like, you've already been torturing the guy. You're not going to be like, oh, so you haven't told anyone. Oh, sorry about this. What a big misunderstanding. Anyway, I'll let you go. Do you want to be dropped off at the hospital? The unsub was hardly going to be like, okay, cool. Cut to Morgan arranging crime scene photos on a board. Not crime scene photos, the photos of the victims. Garcia comes in with a massive fucking moving box and says, you're going to need a bigger board. Morgan is like, hey, did you bring breakfast? And she's like, you're not going to want to eat after you've seen these. She explains she has gone back 15 years and there are over 100 unsolved murders, with more coming in. Torture is consistent across the victims. And Morgan says, I think the unsub is more than a hitman. He posits that the unsub was a hunter in his youth and moved on to humans once he perfected his craft. He says they're dealing with a serial killer who has the perfect career, and that Russo doesn't know what he's dealing with. And he implies that that might be the way to break him. And honestly, I'm going to say it might break him in more ways than one. Cut back to the bar from the start of the episode. Hotch and Morgan walk up to Russo and say, hey, we're worried about you. We know you didn't order the hit on Freddy. And then they give him a folder full of crime scene photos to look at, pointing out that the unsub is good at what he does and has moved on from mob hits to killing civilians, which is drawing attention and will make problems for Russo in the long run. So Russo seems frankly unbothered until Morgan goes up to him and puts his arm around Russo's shoulders and indicates that the unsub will now think he talked to the FBI even if he hasn't. So essentially, I've just signed your death warrant. Like, a great tactic to get people to talk. Thanks, Morgan. There's a surveillance man outside Russo's office, and Garcia, Elle, and Reed are in Garcia's lair, picking up on Russo's phone conversations. He tells Vinny to stop being so paranoid. Although I do have to point out, it's not paranoia if someone really is out to get you, and the FBI are actually hunting Vinny. That's not paranoid. That's a perfectly logical thing to think.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wouldn't invite a serial killer to my office while I was alone, but hey, maybe that means I'll never make it in the waste management business. On the topic of waste management, Vinny is packing up his torture kit and preparing to leave Jimmy alone in what looks like an abandoned warehouse while he goes to have this midnight chat with Russo. He's telling Jimmy it's another method of torture, really, that nature has her own cleanup crew. Flies, larvae, maggots, beetles, rats, squirrels, crows, buzzards. He then makes another cut into Jimmy's arm, saying that the various creatures will be along soon because they like the smell of blood. Yeah. Just absolutely awful. Cut back to Garcia's lair. They're trying to work out who Vinny is. Garcia is once again being a little passive-aggressive by throwing Elle's coffee directly in the bin. And I know you don't want coffee spilled over your laptop, but you could just say, don't put it on the desk. Like, it's midnight. If Elle can't sleep, at least give her some caffeine. They land on a man called Vincent Peralta. There's not much evidence on him, so Garcia has to do something a little less than legal by finding deleted files on Peralta's criminal record. Reed points out that if they get caught, they could be sent to prison for computer felony fraud, but Elle doesn't seem bothered and says that they'll make bail. And even if they couldn't, Garcia is already in. How do Garcia and Reed keep breaking the law? One of them is going to end up in prison for real at this rate. Like, Jesus. Stop tempting fate. So Peralta, despite having a juvenile record, has stayed off the radar as an adult. He doesn't even have a driver's license or own property or have a rental address, which is odd considering it's 2005, so no one's paying in cash anymore. You leave a paper trail everywhere. However, that bit is not quite as odd as Peralta breaking into an infirmary to attack a boy who looked at him funny. Sorry, what? This guy is already in the infirmary.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing to him now? Did he look at you funny while he was in the infirmary? I don't understand. But anyway, cut to Russo's scrapyard. Gideon and Morgan are leading agents around to try and catch Peralta on his little visit. Unfortunately, no one is watching Hotch, who gets clubbed in the back of the head with a metal pipe before Peralta literally tries to choke him with a wire. Morgan rounds the corner, has a headshot to, stop Hotch from being garroted. But Gideon's like, no, we need to take him alive. Don't take the shot. Meanwhile, I'm sure Hotch loses the ability to see colour as oxygen is cut off from his brain. Luckily, Gideon comes up behind them and tasers Peralta in the back. As Morgan rushes off to cuff him, Gideon kneels down to see if Hotch is okay. And, he's bleeding from his mouth, so I'm guessing no. And Gideon takes this opportunity to make a joke and be like, hey, take off your tie for once. The man literally has a newborn baby at home and you would not let someone take the kill shot. And he is now bleeding from the mouth after being choked. I think you just endangered someone who has a newborn at home. Meanwhile, smirking like he's somehow getting away with something, Peralta is being bundled into the car with federal agents, and Josh comes up to let them know that they found a van nearby covered in blood, and they found Jimmy's jacket in the van. Gideon is also, as they're just walking off, Gideon is rubbing his hand like somehow his hand got hurt. I'm sorry, did tasering someone hurt your hand? Like, you just let Hotch get choked out. Like, the man can barely walk now. And you're just like, oh, my hand kind of hurts. Shut up, Gideon. Cut to oh, no, this is awful. Cut to Jimmy tied to a chair. He's barely conscious. And thankfully, we don't linger on that for too long because the Nature's cleanup crew are starting. So thankfully, we are zoomed right back to the BAU. Peralta is being brought in shackles, and Josh goes over the fact that harsh interrogation rarely works on criminals, which is true. You need to have the criminal believe there's a way out, light at the end of the tunnel. If you confess, we'll take the death penalty off the table, stuff like that. But Hotch is like, nah, that's just for ordinary criminals. Someone with antisocial personality disorder won't trust us anyway, so we may as well make him as uncomfortable as possible. Peralta is still smiling like he's reading a mildly funny pun in a newspaper headline, and honestly, it's making me mad. Like, you are in shackles in an FBI office. At what point do you think you're getting out of here now? In the bullpen, Morgan, Elle, and Reed are sorting through the box of stuff that's found in Peralta's van. They're like, oh, he wasn't exactly neat, was he? And it's like, okay, I don't think that's the worst crime you could accuse him of right now. In fact, I believe the worst crime is mass murder. It's not like, all of the hundreds of murders would be a fun personality quirk if he just kept the van tidy. Morgan sends Garcia and Reed off to watch some of the films that were in the van, and I don't think it's going to be good. But anyway, Gideon and Hotch are looking at Peralta through the glass, and Gideon's preparing to go in and interrogate. Hotch is understandably concerned and even takes a pen away from Gideon in case Peralta uses it as a weapon. But Gideon's just like, nah, I'll be okay. Walks into the nearly empty interrogation room and just kind of leans against the table, which is off to the side. Gideon's also like, hey, were you advised of your rights? And Peralta's like, yeah, hey, you want to talk? Take my shackles off. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, No, dude, why would you even think that you've just tried to murder an FBI agent? No one is going to be like, oh yeah, sure, sorry, are the cuffs too tight? They're not going to take your shackles off and let you try again to kill another agent. So Morgan and Josh joined Hotch outside the interrogation room, and Hotch is muttering under his breath, don't turn your back on him, Gideon. Not because Gideon will be in danger, but because it's dismissive to Peralta, and he is not going to react well to that. Now, Josh. Let's talk about Josh. He does look like a very physically fit man. I'm sure he can run a mile. I'm sure he can do a full workout in the gym. But he says, hey, let's turn the cameras off and I'll get Peralta to talk. And even if I was okay with police violence against unarmed people, I still don't see the scenario in which Josh is taking on Peralta and winning, even if Peralta remains shackled and Josh is allowed to take his gun in. Like, sorry, what do you think you're going to do, Josh? Like, that man is not going to react. A Hotch does stop him, and he's like, yeah, no, Peralta's suffered a lot of child abuse. There's no way anything you could do would cause him to crack. But yeah, I don't see what Josh's end plan was there. Peralta figures out that Gideon isn't from organised crime, and thus begins another scene where someone from the BAU has to defend their investigative work to someone because it's season 1 and we can't guarantee everyone's seen the previous 7 episodes. Yeah, it could well be the case that you're looking through the channels, you find this on episode 8, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm not going to be able to watch the first 7 because I don't have a DVR. So what's this profiling thing again? So that's, just so you know, that's going to keep coming throughout the rest of the season, Sara. Gideon says Peralta, well, he tells Peralta that they have a word for him. Actually, quite a few words, but it's not the same words that I would use. Instead, Gideon lists off diagnoses, and Peralta doesn't even flinch when confronted with pictures of his victims. Jimmy, the DeMarcos, Freddie. Although he does take the time to make a funny, in quotation marks, joke about Freddie doing a late-night TV commercial for dead worms. And at first, I was like, I'm sorry, what the fuck is this? Why are people selling dead worms? And then I realised that it's American TV, and so they have infomercials for medicinal products like those used to treat erectile dysfunction. But yeah, initially I was like, dead worms? Is this like some really specialist, like, fishing lure?
That's what I thought. That's the first thing that came to my mind was fishing.
Yeah, I was like, sorry, wait, what? Who is the target audience for like these late night fishing infomercials? Hey, do you like fishing and you wanna catch some more fish? Try our dead worms. I can get dead worms myself. They're in my garden. Like, I'm not paying you $19.99 plus tax. So Gideon does what he does best, which is insinuate that Peralta can't perform sexually in order to rile him up. Because we all know that Gideon's favourite thing to do is to just poke and prod at unsubs until they fucking try to kill him. Actually, maybe we should have Gideon tested for something. Maybe he has some sort of personality disorder that means he's just like constantly riling up people that could kill him.
Yeah.
And then Gideon flips the crime board over to show hundreds of photos on the other side of Peralta's other victims. And Gideon says, hey, do you want to take the cuffs off again? And it's like, no. They think you've killed hundreds of people. They're not taking the cuffs off you. At this point, Josh comes in screaming and begins attacking Peralta. And it's like, sorry, did you think that was helping? He just comes in, like, basically, it's like as if someone who is half your size runs up to you and they're like whacking you in the arm, like one of your nephews. Like, if your middle nephew like ran up to you and just started hitting you in the arm, like, yeah, that kind of hurts, but more than that, you're small, like, I'm not going to hit back.
Or I just put my hand on his head and he's like, ah, sweet. It's
It's
funny.
like
It's cute.
Peralta very much would hit back.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. So you'll be shocked to know this doesn't go the way that Josh is hoping, with Peralta suddenly cracking under the pressure. Instead, Peralta seems amused and basically laughs as he says, I knew Jimmy was a fed. And then Gideon is bundling Josh out of the room, thinking, what the hell do I have to do to get some fucking security around here? And then Peralta makes my point earlier. Is it still called paranoia if I'm right? Thankfully, we cut to Garcia and Reed for a bit of comic relief, with Garcia joking that the video from the truck is going to involve naked co-eds and a plumber. Reed doesn't get the joke, so Garcia just shakes her head and moves on. But I'll bet you $10 that Garcia would much rather it had been porn, because that would have been a lot less horrifying than whatever is on those fucking videos.
Yeah.
Instead, all the videos show torture, and the indication is that in at least one of them, the man is being slowly eaten alive by rats. Now, I know it's not cool to kink shame anybody, but let's draw the line right before torture and say that is where we draw the line. No, you can't have torture porn. Thank you. Garcia is watching this slightly horrified, but also like she wants popcorn, like how I watch a Final Destination movie. But at least no one in the Final Destination movies are literally being eaten alive by rats. At least they're just actors. Cutting back to the bullpen, Gideon is cursing out Josh for ruining the interview, saying he may have ruined the only chance they had to get Jimmy out alive, and Josh finally cracks to explain that he didn't take Jimmy out when Jimmy asked. Instead, he told Jimmy to hang tough because they had so much riding on the investigation. Luckily, Reed bursts in to give them worse news. Jimmy is being eaten alive by rats. So we cut to Jimmy in the warehouse, barely lit, with the rats making their way towards him. And I'm not just talking like a couple of rats. I'm talking, this is like a freaking army of rats that is coming from almost nowhere. And then you all also see, when you see the rats going past, there's a camera up in the corner recording all of this. Garcia's taken stills of the videos, so JJ is now tasked with circulating the images to see if they match up with missing person cases. So she's had better days at work. Garcia is trying to isolate the background noise on the tapes to see if they can find out where Jimmy is being held, because it looks like it's the same place as all the videos. It looks like it's the same place. Reed is fiddling with something, and I'll be honest, watching Criminal Minds since my autism diagnosis, I'm watching him do stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I do that. Yeah, no, I get why he was, why they were kind of like, yeah, he's autistic. But they don't actually say it, which is annoying. You know, info dumping, stimming, being slightly blind to social cues. Anyway, back to Peralta. They say the only way he could go off the grid is if all his bills were in someone else's name. But it's not Russo's. He barely pays his own bills. The team believe that Peralta made a mistake dumping Freddy's body so close to the crime scenes, as this was the only way they were able to link Peralta to the murders. So, what could it be? The answer, they believe, lies in Mrs. DeMarco, the one female victim and the one person he killed who was not tortured. Hotch goes back into the interview room. Peralta is still looking smug, but Hotch ignores him and starts to tell Peralta what the profile says about his childhood, suffering physical abuse at the hands of his father, Peralta goes, yeah, my old man smacked me about some, didn't everyone's? And Hotch is like, no, that's very much not normal. Reed is in Garcia's lair again, listening to the audio from the videos, and they realize they can hear a plane. So the rat's location is near an airport, and this is the closest we get to Wheels Up in this episode. Back to the interview room, Hotch is still going over Peralta's troubled childhood, and Peralta is making a joke of it, like, you're saving me hundreds of therapy bills. Until that is, Hotch points out that Peralta's mother was also abused by his father, and that strikes a nerve. Peralta suddenly spits out that his mother has nothing to do with this, and Yeah, that's the pressure point. That's where you've got to keep pressing. Morgan and Elle are going through the boxes of crap in Peralta's van, stating that he eats a lot of food in his van. And yeah, I'll be honest, nothing makes me feel more disgusted when they get into someone's car and they have like takeout boxes that they've just like thrown into the footwells. So they're going through these boxes of takeout, and Elle suddenly grabs a pizza box like she's having a revelation, and she asks Morgan, "Hey, where do you get your pizza from?" And he's like, "From my neighborhood." And he looks as confused as me, because she holds this pizza box up triumphantly like it proves something. And I don't know, is this an American thing? Do you order pizza from your neighborhood, but Chinese food you only get from the big city? What's going on? Because I have a lot of takeout, but I'm never like, oh yeah, well, I order, you know, the best Chinese food in the city, but pizza, it's just the one down the road. So I was so confused about this. So American listeners, write in if you have any information on this, if this is a typical thing. Like, I just order from whichever one is the closest and has the best vegetarian options. Back to Hotch in the interview room, he is goading Peralta because, as we've established, everyone has learnt from Gideon, hey, if you just prod the unsub enough, they'll get so angry at you, they'll make a mistake, and hopefully that's before they snap your fucking neck. I'm thinking, this is going to go wrong, but never mind, we're back to the magical pizza place. And they found one location right near an airport, and Gideon instructs them to look for property record linked to Vincent's father, because that's how he's staying off the radar. They then learn the tragic circumstances of Mr. Peralta's death, and I say tragic, but I don't mean it. He beat his wife and child. If his son shot him in the back of the head, maybe you should have raised him better. Then there's a SWAT team descending on the Peralta property, and they find Jimmy inside, only slightly gnawed by rats. At this point, by the way, Gideon is walking into the thing, and he's like kicking the rats away, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Just like turn on the light or something. Don't small animals scatter when you turn the light on. Stop kicking them. That's not helping. And also, just as a side note, Gideon may be a fictional character with the objective to save this man from being eaten alive, but Mandy Patinkin, you're a real person, and those are real fucking rats. I hope the rats are CGI, actually. Like, I just got really annoyed about that. I was like, why are you kicking them? It's not their fault. It's not like they have human concepts of morality. They're just trying to eat. So anyway, my greatest hope is that the rats were CGI and that Mandy Patinkin donated all of his money from Criminal Minds to an animal charity. Anyway, luckily they found Jimmy and rescuing him from the chair. Meanwhile, Hotch is still psychoanalyzing Peralta, saying it's not surprising he turned out to be a killer considering his upbringing. We then get a kind of a famous quote where Peralta is questioning Hotch by like, hey, don't most abused children go up to be killers? And Hotch shoots back, no, some are motivated to catch them instead. And Peralta is looking back, still smiling, and it fades to black. But we get some lore about Hotch. He also did grow up with an abusive father, but instead of growing up to kill people, he grew up to catch them. And that is the end of the episode recap.
Thanks for that, Emma. And we'll be back with the episode discussion right after the short break.
Hey, we're back, ready to talk about the episode, interesting points, notable guest stars, and of course, our baby girl or pretty boy from the episode. So, Sarah, do you want to start with the interesting points? Because I know there's something you're angry about.
Yes. There's no Jesse.
I know. It's sad.
I got my new phrase to use again. Tires up. As they're driving locally to Maryland, which is literally just...
Yes, but we are very glad that they are not taking a private jet from Quantico to Maryland. And then we have Garcia. She's out of the lair at one point and then shoved back in. But she finally has more screen time. It only goes up from here, Garcia fans. And our unsub for this episode, Vincent Peralta, he is actually the first of 9 unsubs in the show's history who are confirmed to have claimed hundreds of lives. He said it was an interesting point. We didn't say it was fun.
Just pointed at it.
Okay, do you want to do the notable guest stars?
I shall. So, to be honest, I didn't personally recognise anyone in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I did some Googling, as you do. And there's 2 that stood out as being probably more well-known than the others.
Mm-hmm.
So the first is Francesco Quinn, who played Michael Russo. And he's best known for his portrayal of the underground drug king Ra in the Academy Award-winning film Platoon. Never seen it. But apparently if it's won an Academy Award, it's big. So, well, it's well-known by other people. Just not me. And the second person is, like, his parents could have thought of a better name, but Patrick Kilpatrick.
Yeah.
And he played the unsub Vincent Peralta. And he's known mostly for playing villains alongside top Hollywood actors. So a few examples, the film Last Man Standing he did with Bruce Willis. Under Siege 2 he did with Steven Seagal. Replacement Killers with Chow Yun-fat. Razor with Arnold Schwarzenegger and James Caan, and The Presidio with Sean Connery and Mark Harmon. Now, his face is familiar. I may have seen him elsewhere. I just can't remember where I've seen him from.
Yeah, no, I thought his face was really familiar, but I did look through all of his credits last night and I was like, I don't think I've watched any of these.
No.
So I think it must be that my parents have watched some of these films because my parents quite like Bruce Willis films. Schwarzenegger films.
We've probably seen him in passing, but we've not realised.
Yeah, like my parents have probably had them on when I was a child, but I was sitting in the same room colouring or something.
Yeah, that's it. Should we move on to the episode MVP?
Yes, so our baby girl, pretty boy for the episode, did you look at what I wrote? Do you agree with that?
I did, and I did.
Okay. It'd be really awkward if you were like, I don't actually. I'd be like, well, I started speaking, so I'm going to edit it. I'm going to put in my one. Our pretty boy for this episode is Hotch because he grew up to hunt killers rather than become them. And, you know, we always like a good arc like that. And it was nice to find out some more Hotch lore because that's actually a really... Like, in the fandom, I've seen people quote that a lot. And I've been like, oh, yeah, like, it was something that I was like, yeah, no, I obviously know that. But just never had any recollection of this episode at all. So maybe I missed the episode, and then it was just people had said it online so much that I was like, yeah, no, I've totally seen that episode.
Yeah.
Okay, now we have our true crime recap. And so, Sarah... It's time to deliver the profile.
Thank you, Emma. So the unsub from this episode is a prolific serial killer and a hitman, and appears to be closely representative of a true crime case of Richard Leonard Kuklinski, aka the Iceman. So the unsub from this episode is a prolific serial killer and a hitman, and appears to be closely representative of a true crime case which is of Richard Leonard Kuklinski, aka the Iceman. Now, both men came from abusive backgrounds and fantasized about killing their fathers, but in the unsub's case, he actually did. And most of the victims were male as well, so it kind of gets the father hating, you know what I mean. So Kuklinski was born April 11th, 1935 in Jersey City, New Jersey. He was a second born of 4 children to Stanley, a Polish immigrant from the village of Kavac, which was about 55 miles north of Warsaw, and his mother Anne, a first-generation Irish-American. Stanley was an abusive alcoholic who routinely beat everyone in the family, while Anne, a devout Catholic, often beat her children with broomsticks. Sadly, in 1940, it gets worse.
Oh.
Sadly, in 1940, Kuklinski's older brother Florian was beaten to death by his father. The family were then made to cover it up as an accident, claiming that he'd fallen down the stairs. In 1970, his younger brother Joseph was convicted of raping and killing 12-year-old Pamela Dial by throwing her off a 5-story building. He spent almost 30 years in prison before he died in 2003. Back to Richard, at the age of 10, he began torturing animals and often fantasized about killing his father. His favourite method of torturing animals was tying cats together by their tails, throwing them over clotheslines and watching them tear each other apart. I know your face says it all.
You kill your father, I'm just going to be like, oh well, Finn's the herd. Stop tying cats together by their tails and throwing them over clotheslines. Oh my god.
Around the time that he dropped out of school in the 8th grade at age 14, he committed his first known murder, which was beating the leader of a teenage gang to death and throwing him off a bridge. He also attacked the other 6 gang members, also almost killing them.
So it was 7-on-1 and basically he somehow won.
Yeah.
Don't really understand how that happened, but okay.
In his early 20s, he married his first wife, Linda, and had 2 sons, Richard Jr. and David. By 1961, he divorced Linda and married his second wife, Barbara Pedrici, with whom he had 2 daughters and a son, Merrick, Kristen, and Dwayne. He later divorced her as well in the 90s.
Are you going to tell me that he was actually a really good father and he didn't hurt any of his kids?
You'll find out later on.
He decided he wasn't going to kill animals anymore. He's completely reformed. But, you know, just his father and low-level criminals.
Well, stay tuned, Emma, because you'll find out.
Oh, no.
His children never knew of his crimes until after he was caught. They simply thought he was a businessman, as the family lived a comfortable lifestyle, unknowingly funded by his crimes. In the mid-60s, Richard was working at a Manhattan film lab. He would access master copies of popular films and make bootleg copies of Disney animated movies, which he then would sell on.
That's fine.
He also copied and distributed pornography films, through which he became acquainted with the Gambino crime family. Later claimed to have been the favourite hitman of, and later killed, Roy DeMeo, who was one of the members of the Gambino mob. Several members of DeMeo's crew later became FBI informants many years later, but none of them mentioned Kuklinski or alluded that they knew him. His involvement with DeMeo was also disputed by Jerry Capice, who is the author of Murder Machine, and former Colombo capo Michael Franzese. Among his other lies, he claimed to have killed former Teamsters Union leader Jimmy Hoffa, and also gunned down 2 New York mafia bosses.
If you killed Jimmy Hoffa, tell us where his body is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Hoffa's body's not found.
Along with these supposed crimes and actual crimes, he also ran a burglary gang with associates Gary Smith, Barbara Dettner, Daniel Dettner, and Percy House. Gary and Daniel were later among his murder victims, whom Richard had killed to protect himself when the cops were after the gang.
How did he have time to do all this and do his film job and pirate Disney films and pornography?
Who knows?
See, this is the problem, Sarah. He wasn't helping out at home, was he? He wasn't going home and being like, I'll do the dishes, don't worry, love, thanks for a nice meal. He was like, yeah, you have to do the dishes. I have to go out and run my burglary gang as my second job after bootlegging pornography all day.
So following on from his stint in the 60s distributing bootleg copies of films and running the burglary gang presumably throughout the 70s, in 1980, January 30th to be specific, Richard shot 42-year-old George Maliband during a meeting to sell tapes. Maliband was carrying $27,000 at the time for the purchase.
What?
His body was found a week later on February the 5th in a 55-gallon drum near the Chemitex chemical plant in New Jersey.
Oh, I never like it when it's in a drum.
And his leg tendons had been cut so that he would fit in the barrel. So in 1982, April 29th, 51-year-old pharmacist Paul Hoffman was killed during a meeting in which he'd hoped to make a big profit purchasing stolen medication, specifically the peptic ulcer drug Tagamet, and he was going to resell it through his pharmacy.
So I am completely on board with selling medication cheaper than the shops want. Medicine should be free. So I don't care about a farmer bro losing some money. Also, I'd like to point out that I have just looked up the inflation thing to tell you like what $27,000 would have been worth today. It's like over $104,000. Like, this guy just had that much on his person.
As you do.
Like, oh yeah, I've just got like 105 grand in my pocket. Don't worry about it though.
So Richard had tried to shoot Paul, but the gun jammed. So instead he beat him to death with a tire iron.
Oh.
And Richard claimed that he'd left the body in another 55-gallon drum outside a motel in Little Ferry, New Jersey. But
where's he always getting drums from?
God knows, but this body was never found. In December of 1982, his associate Gary Smith met an unfortunate ending. So, of the gang members, the gang member Perry House had been arrested and was placed into protective custody after he agreed to inform on his boss. Warrants were then issued for 42-year-old Gary Smith and 46-year-old Daniel Decker. Richard urged them to lay low, but Smith was eager to see his daughter, so left the motel. Richard then feared that Smith had become an informant, and according to another gang member, Barbara Deppner, the rest of the gang decided that he needed to be killed to protect themselves.
Because he wanted to see his daughter.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so suspicious. Why? This is the 1980s. Why would a man want to have any contact with his children?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a scam. Let's kill him.
And do you want to know how he was killed? He was fed a hamburger laced with cyanide. But when this method was too slow to kill him, Daniel strangled him with a lamp cord. His body was found on December 27th, hidden in a motel room between the mattress and the box spring of a bed.
No, that's my absolute nightmare.
And the smell of decomp had alerted the motel manager after complaints of the smell from other guests.
I have watched so many episodes where that has happened, and now I'm always petrified whenever I stay in a hotel. Like, even in a travel lodge, I want to be like, let's just lift up the mattress, check there's not a dead body in here before we start. Did I don't know if I've ever told you the story. You remember when I was a housekeeper for the summer? Back in 2011. Basically, they were like, okay, so cool. If you find like any kind of like things in the room that kind of shouldn't be in the room, like vomit or feces or blood, you have to call these numbers to get specific bags to take the laundry away. And one day I walked into the hotel room and I didn't do the beds first, I was doing the bathroom. And I was like, oh, this flannel's got a little bit of blood on it, like someone had cut themselves shaving. And I was like, oh well, that's only a tiny bit of blood. That'll be fine because it's just like a speck. And then as I like picked up the towels from the bath, they were like covered in blood, and I was like, oh my God. I like dropped them straight back in the bath. And I went out to go and call through the hotel phone to call the front desk and be like, someone needs to help me. And then I get over to the bed, the pillow is covered in blood, and I'm like, oh my God, someone has died here. And I'm ringing the head office like, I'm not touching anything else. Someone needs to come up here. There is so much blood everywhere. And they came up. I put all the towels and all the bloody sheets into one specific bag. And I was like, I don't know that we should be doing this, really. I really think we should be calling the police, or at least checking on the people who are staying in this room. Just give them a call. Ask to speak to both of them. Anyway, I didn't find out what happened, but one of my managers was like, "Oh, it's probably just a nosebleed," and I was like, "That looks more like someone has, like, you know, been murdered." But sure, a nosebleed. Anyway, never found out what happened. If you were staying at Pop Century in 2011, and you had a massive nosebleed, could you just let me know it was you? Just so I feel better. Oh no, maybe this is one of those things about Disney World being like, no one dies at Disney World. We just cover up murders.
And you helped.
No, I'm complicit. I think I'm just going to look up if there are any missing person cases related to Disney World in 2011. Be right back.
Anyway, back to the true crime. So, between February and May of 1983, the other associate of Richard, which was Daniel Deppner, was killed in an apartment in Bergenfield, New Jersey, which belonged to Rich Patterson, the fiancé of Richard's daughter, Merrick. Don't know why he was killed, probably because he was complicit with the Gary Smith murder. It doesn't say. But his body was later found on May the 14th by a cyclist in a wooded area on Clinton Road in West Milford. The corpse had been placed in green garbage bags and been dumped, and was being eaten by vultures. Yeah, I did that first.
Just like awful.
So, a bit of a time jump now, back to 1981. On July the 1st, 50-year-old Louis Masgay arranged to meet Richard at a New Jersey diner to purchase a large quantity of blank video cassettes, and had $95,000 in his van ready for the buy. That day, Masgay went missing, and his body was found 2 years later in September of 1983.
Oh, cool.
In a town park in Orangetown, New York.
I'm plugging in 95,000 in 1981.
Yeah.
Let's see. So that would be a cool 334,000 today.
We could buy that.
So you're telling me that this guy was like, I need to buy some blank video, and rather than just going to Walmart, which I presume did sell them back in the 80s, he was like, instead, I'm going to get £300,000 and I'm going to $300,000 and I'm going to buy it from this rando off the street. If you were like turning up to Walmart, like, hey, I've got $300,000, can I buy some blank video cassettes? They would be like, we can deliver them for you. Yes, sir. Like, you buy in bulk, you get a discount. Stop buying them from criminals.
Anyway, when found, Masgay had been shot in the head, and his body had been found to contain ice crystals.
What?
It was later revealed that he'd been placed in an industrial freezer for 2 years to match the time of death. And this is the case that gave Kuklinski his nickname, the Iceman.
Sorry, does he have this industrial freezer just in his garage or something? How did he ensure that no one went in there? How many people like went in there and were like, "Oh yeah, I'm just looking for the beef," and it's like, "Oh, there's some guy in the corner. Oh yeah, don't worry, he's just someone that Richard killed."
He's just chilling, just leave it.
Yeah.
So Richard Kuklinski was eventually linked to the 5 homicides after law enforcement discovered that he was the last person to see each of the men alive. Operation Iceman was created between the New Jersey Attorney General's office and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, the ATF, in order to arrest and convict him. ATF Special Agent Dominic Polifron went undercover for 18 months to apprehend him, and during the sting in December 1986, in which he arranged to sell cyanide to Richard and hire him to carry out a hit on a rich Jewish kid. Kuklinski was charged with murder, attempted murder, firearm violations, robbery and attempted robbery. In March of 1988, he was found guilty of murdering his associates Daniel Deppner and Gary Smith. He also pleaded guilty to murdering Louis Masgay and George Maliband as part of a plea deal in which some lesser charges against his wife and son were dropped. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences to be served at the Trenton State Prison in New Jersey, which coincidentally is where his younger brother was also incarcerated.
Oh, fantastic. I hope they had a nice family reunion. Why was it only 2 life sentences?
I have no idea.
He's killed like 13 people.
Yeah.
Actually, I wasn't even counting the 7 that he killed at the beginning. He's killed like 20 people.
Well, wait until I get to the next bit. He spent the rest of his life in prison, being interviewed on a couple of occasions for HBO documentaries, which were called the Iceman tapes.
Oh, I think I've actually seen that advertised.
And they were broadcast in 1992, 2001, and 2003. Known for his wild claims, Richard often bragged that he'd killed up to 250 men. In interviews while incarcerated, he confessed to killing another 2 people, an NYPD officer in 1980 and one of his mentors in 1984. So on March the 14th, 1980, 36-year-old Peter Calabro was an NYPD auto crimes detective. He'd been ambushed and shot in Saddle River, New Jersey. He was rumoured to have mob connections and had previously been investigated for selling confidential information to the Gambino crime family. Richard confessed in his 2001 HBO interview that he was the person who killed him and that he'd been paid for the hit by Gambino family member Sammy Gravano. In August of 1984, 38-year-old Robert Pronge was Kuklinski's mentor, who Richard claimed had taught him to use cyanide and other methods to kill. He also claimed that Pronge was the one who suggested that he should put Masque's body in the freezer. Pronge was shot multiple times, and Richard claimed to have killed him after he threatened his family. So on to Kuklinski's MO. So he would often lure men to business meetings with promises of lucrative deals before robbing them and killing them. And his methods of killing included shooting, stabbing, bludgeoning, dismemberment, and poisoning. His favourite weapon was the use of cyanide, as it's easily administered and difficult to detect during the autopsy. Richard would inject.
I would also be fooled into eating cyanide because it tastes like almonds, doesn't it? I ate loads of marzipan at Christmas. Like, literally, you know, my mum had used marzipan to coat the Christmas cakes that she'd made for everyone. And I was just there eating the bits that were left over. I swear I ate like basically a pack of marzipan. And then my tongue started to feel funny. And I was like, I hope I'm not becoming allergic to almonds now. But yeah, it'd be very easy to fool me because I'd just be like, oh, some marzipan, thanks.
Yeah. So Richard would inject the cyanide into hamburgers while his victims were in the bathroom. And among other claims, some victims were tortured, tied up, bleeding, and left in rat-infested areas to be eaten alive. Others were put in cars and then crushed by compactors.
Oh my gosh.
Forensic psychiatrist Park Dietz interviewed Kuklinski in 2002 and believed that Richard suffered from antisocial personality disorder and paranoid personality disorder. His second wife, Barbara, described 2 sides to Richard, good Richie and bad Richie. Good Richie was an affectionate father and a loving husband who enjoyed spending time with his family, whereas bad Richie was prone to unpredictable fits of rage, smashing furniture and being violent to his family, physically abusive to his wife and emotionally abusive to his children. On March 5th, 2006, at the age of 70, Robert Kuklinski died in a secure wing of the St. Francis Medical Center. He suffered a cardiac arrest following heart disease and phlebitis. Although he had told doctors to revive him if he went into cardiac arrest, his second ex-wife, Barbara, had signed a DNR. In the week before his death, she was asked by doctors if she wanted to rescind her decision. She declined. If that isn't the last, fuck you.
Yeah, so some advice to murderers. You know how I like to give my advice to criminals who might be listening. Don't let your ex-wife still be the next of kin on your medical records. I mean, some advice, even if you're not a criminal, don't let your ex be your next of kin. Like, Hey, he's gone into a coma. We think he might be able to come out of it if he's on life support, but no, just pull the plug.
But yeah,
I don't know whether this podcast is more me encouraging people to commit crimes or me telling people not to commit crimes. But I want to stress, commit less crimes, but if you're going to commit a crime, be less dumb.
yeah. Anyway, stay tuned because we'll be back very shortly.
Welcome back to Looking for a Man in His 30s. And now we are on to the part of the episode where it's called What Would Penelope Garcia Do? Basically, we like to link people with resources that can help them or a cause that they might like to help, generally related to the episode itself. For this one, we thought it would make sense to focus on child abuse because there was such a strong theme of that from the abuse that Hotch suffered, the abuse that Peralta suffered, and the abuse that the real-life criminal faced as well. Because we did domestic abuse last week, so we are specifically looking at child abuse this week. Sarah, do you want to go first?
So in the UK, we have 2 charities that you can contact for help. There's childline.org.uk, which is a charity that helps anyone under the age of 19 with whatever issue they may be going through, and it can be from abuse to bullying to simply feeling overwhelmed with what's going on around them. On the website, there's one-to-one chat available with counsellors, along with message boards so you can talk to people your age about similar things that you're experiencing. There's a helpline that's also available to speak to someone directly, which is 0800 1111. Your communication with the counsellors will remain confidential. You don't have to give an email address, and you don't even have to give your real name. For any adults suspecting abuse, the NSPCC is available to help, and that's the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. There's a helpline for those who are concerned about children, maybe relatives or friends or if
Neighbours.
you're in school. And the phone number for that helpline is 0808 800 5000. Or you can email them at help@nspcc.org.uk. The NSPCC provides support and advice for families, works with schools to give children the knowledge to keep them safe, and also works with local communities to prevent abuse and its causes. But most importantly, if you suspect or know that a child is in immediate danger, call the police on 999 straight away and report it. And Emma, over to you for the USA.
Okay, so in the USA, I found the childhelphotline.org. They offer information to help children identify abuse because they may see it as normal if it's what they grew up with. Linking back to the episode, it's doesn't everyone's dad beat them? No. And they also allow children to talk to a counsellor via live chat or through texts or phone calls. And that number for both the text and the phone call is 800 422 44533. They have a database of over 10,000 resources for children in the US and abroad, and they can connect you with support in over 170 languages. They also have an interactive map of the US where people can get information on child safety laws per state. However, if you are in immediate danger, you should still call 911. What I really liked about the Child Help Hotline is that they have a when you go onto the website first, there's a pop-up to let children know how to delete their browsing history and explaining the emergency exit button on the page. Because if an abusive parent knew the child was accessing the site, it could compound the abuse and put the child in more harm. And it had information specifically for teens and for parents who are working on being better parents, which I also felt was good. For people in the US, if you are worried about a specific child, if you think they're in immediate danger, call 911. But if you just suspect something, you can raise it with your local Child Protection Services agency and give all the information that you have to them and they can look into it.
That's all for this week. We'll come back next week when we'll be talking about Criminal Minds Season 1, Episode 9, Derailed.
And while you're waiting for the next episode, why not follow us on social media? If you've been following this part of the podcast, as I have a breakdown over whether Instagram will allow us to put looking for a man in his 30s as our username, they won't. So you can find us on Instagram at looking for a man his 30s pod and Tumblr at looking for a man his 30s pod. Or you can email us at lookingforamanhis30s@gmail.com. I couldn't edit that to make the to match the social handles. It does annoy me. But all 3 times, 30s is spelled out. Don't put 30 or you might get one of the bots that Instagram clearly thinks we are.
And you can also rate and review us on whichever platform you're using to listen to podcasts. And it really helps us more than you know.
Until next time.
This case is closed.